to Coffee with Amisha. Today we are diving into one of history's most dramatic, chaotic and honestly unbelievable chapters in English history. We've all heard about King Henry VIII and his 6 wives. It almost feels like the ultimate soap opera, right? 6 queens, 6 stories, 6 women who each left their mark on England. Catherine of Aragon's strength, Jane Seymour's quiet legacy, Catherine Parr's intellect. They were all influential. But here's the question. Why does Anne Boleyn stand out above the rest? Why does her name still echo louder even centuries later, even today? Why was Anne Boleyn more influential than the others, though each of them had their own influence on King Henry in their own ways? Now, for this, we will have to go and time travel back a few years to when Anne Boleyn first met Henry. Picture this, England in the 1500s. Now, Henry VIII is a powerful, young and already known for his string of mistresses. Queens and ladies at the court come and go, but then Anne Boleyn enters the scene. Why did she stand out of all his mistresses at that time? And was it the most beautiful? Point to be noted. Anne was not the most beautiful at the court, at least not by the standards of the day. Yes, she is beautiful by the standards of today, but not of that day, of that time. But she had something rarer: charisma, wit, and intelligence. She could spar with Henry, challenge him, and hold her ground. That was unusual. Most women flattered him and questioned him. But that challenge, that's what caught Henry's attention in the first place. She wasn't just a conquest, she became an obsession. Now, how did she influence the king? Here's where the real story begins. Anne wasn't just there for romance. She had ambition, ideas, and influence. Henry wanted to marry her, but there was one problem. He was already married to Catherine of Aragon, and the Pope of England did not allow him for a divorce. So what happened? Henry pushed the boundaries. Henry, pushed by his obsession with Anne Boleyn, broke away from the Catholic Church. Think about that for a second. Anne Boleyn was the heart of England, the heart of England's break with Rome, the start of the English Reformation. That's not just a love story, that's a revolution, an entire revolution, even more ferocious than a French Revolution. Anne also had a sharp political mind. She introduced Henry to reformist texts, pushed him toward new ideas, and built her own network at the court. She wasn't a silent queen. She was active, opinionated, and not afraid to show that. Of course, power makes enemies, and Anne's boldness, which had once attracted Henry VIII, now repelled him and began to threaten him and his throne. Court gossip, political rivals, and Henry's own shifting desires turned against her. Her downfall was brutal. She was accused falsely of treason, adultery, and even incest. And finally, in 1536, she was executed by the sword with these 3 false accusations. But here's the twist. Her death didn't erase her influence. If anything, it made her legacy turn brighter. Anne's story didn't end with her execution. Her daughter, Elizabeth I, grew up to become one of the greatest monarchs in English history. The Elizabethan age, the golden age of Shakespeare, exploration, and art, was born out of Anne's bloodline. So, why does Anne stand out? Because unlike the other wives, her presence didn't just change Henry's household, it changed the entire direction of history and of the nation. Religion, politics, culture, legacy, you name it, all shifted because of her. Her life was short and her death was tragic, but her influence? Immense. So, here's what I take from Anne Boleyn's story. Sometimes it's not about how long you're on the stage, it's about how deeply you leave your mark while you're on the stage. Anne Boleyn wasn't perfect. She was complicated, fiery, and at times reckless. But she dared to stand out, and in doing so, she altered English history for the entire world. So, as we sip our coffee today, maybe the question to ask is this. Yes, the question to ask is this. It's not about how long you're on stage. It's about how deeply you leave your mark while you're there. It's about where in your own lives can we stand out? Where can we influence change, even in the small ways? Because leadership and impact aren't about the crowns and castles, they're about courage. Now, that's all I wanted to convey. This is Amisha Mati signing off. Thank you for joining me on Coffee with Amisha. Until next time, let's keep learning, questioning, and maybe, just maybe, changing the story. Bye.